So this happened April 4th of 2022. My friend and I were on our way back to Kentucky from Columbus, Ohio after a Matt Maltese concert. We got about 20 miles out from the venue, and we both decided to stop and grab a snack, as well as use the bathroom. We did our business, got our snacks, and hopped back into my car and ate. I looked at the GPS and realized it changed our route from the interstate down some highway. I didn't really question it much because it was already 12 a.m., and we were tired and just wanted to go home. We start making our way down the highway when I realize there's literally nothing. No other buildings, no lights along the road. The only place I saw when we got off the exit was that gas station. Just the gas station, absolutely nothing else. There were hardly any trees we could see on our way down the highway, just open and flat fields. My GPS tells me after 4 to 6 miles to turn on a small road. I thought it was weird that I had to turn on a road that didn't even have 2 lanes or any lights. Just 3 sporadically placed houses that didn't even look like someone lived in them. At this point, I started feeling really off. I initially felt weird when we went to the highway instead of the interstate, but thought I was just being paranoid. Now at this point, I joked with my friend, this would be the perfect place to see an SW. I didn't say the name, just the abbreviation. If you don't know what it is, well, just Google it. I've always been superstitious and don't like even saying or thinking the full name. I even hate the abbreviations. He laughed and said, "Don't even say that." My GPS tells me there's a railroad coming up, so I was ready for it. Problem was, I didn't see the railroad until we came right on top of it. The only light coming from my headlights. The train looked abandoned, the carts covered in graffiti, and the wheels corroded to hell. There was no railroad lights, no bells saying a train was coming through, just pitch darkness and silence. My friend and I both felt a chill run down our spine, and we both just knew. We didn't know what exactly, just that we knew. He said my name in a scared tone, and I just knew I had to get us out. There was no way forward or around. I threw my car in reverse and quickly backed up until I was in the grass and booked it going 80 down the highway back to the gas station. When we finally collected ourselves, we sat and thought about it. Why would the GPS take us there if the train had clearly been sat there for a while? Wouldn't that road have been closed off? Wouldn't there have been signs saying so? Why weren't the railroad lights on? Why did it reroute there in the first place? Just so many questions, but one thing I noticed is the moment we parked at the gas station and restarted my GPS, it went back to its original route of the interstate. We knew for certain that train didn't just break down that day and they left it. It had been sitting for a while. The wheels don't just corrode like that if it was broke down for just one day. The biggest issue I have with the situation is that it felt so fake, and yet it was real. It didn't feel real from the moment we left the gas station to the moment we came back to the gas station. It felt like I was just there, floating and watching. It didn't feel real. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Maybe we freaked out over nothing. Maybe we are reading into it too much, but I know how I felt, and I know the feeling in my gut was horrible. I went on a road trip to my family for a small reunion because the family was starting to break apart again. I was far away from all of them, so it was obviously going to be a long ride. After about a day of driving and pulling into gas stations, I needed sleep. Obviously, you shouldn't drive when you're tired. I pulled into a motel, which seemed normal at first. There wasn't much people there, only a few workers and a couple. Despite all the shit that has happened in my past, motels weren't that scary, and I knew everything that happened at them was only in horror movies, not real life. But I still felt slightly on edge. I went to the front desk, got my room, and brought my bags. I'd only have to stay here for a night. The room was cozy and had a nice lighting, the type that comforts you. I got to sleep fine, but at 2 a.m. I woke up. A weird feeling washed over me, and I now felt very uncomfortable. I figured getting up and getting a drink or something could make me calm down a little. There was a coffee tea machine in my room and a cup, so I went and made myself warm tea. I wasn't a fan of coffee. I drank the tea and then I attempted to go back to sleep. Probably 5 minutes after I closed my eyes, the phone that you use to call front desk went off. I knew best not to answer, but I was too scared and wanted to know why I was being called. I picked up the phone, and just heard a faint buzz, like the sound you'd hear when the signal of a TV is cutting out, and it makes that glitching noise. I ran to the reception area, opened the door, and realized nobody was there. Not the receptionist or any of the workers. Again, just a faint buzz and a radio going off in the back room of the reception. Not like a walkie-talkie, it was the type of radios that play music. Keep in mind, this wasn't in the 90s or before, this was recently. It was classical music playing on the radio. I mean, in a way, this wasn't really that weird. Maybe I got a prank call and the receptionist is actually just sleeping or something, and all the workers are too. Kinda comforted me a little more. I turned around and a man was there. The man was tall, above 6 foot definitely. "What do you need?" the man said. I told him about the call. He said it was a regular occurrence and that it only happens to people that deserve it. Deserve what? I didn't ask. I didn't want to drag the conversation on for any longer than how long it currently was. I walked back to my room. During the rest of the night, the phone kept going off. It didn't stop at all. I got up again and went outside when I noticed the man standing outside my window, but with his back turned towards it. "What are you doing?" I asked him. He told me he just wanted some air. I went and got a drink from the vending machines. I walked back and realized the man was gone, but my door was wide open. I went back in and got into bed, closing and locking my door. Yes, I did just ignore my door being wide open. I was too tired and just couldn't be bothered with anything else. I woke up again after sleeping for probably about an hour to the sound of my doors knocking. Not just my front door, but my bathroom door as well. My door oddly wasn't locked, but I fucking ran at that door, hoping that if someone was out there, I'd knock them over and that I'd have time to get to the front desk. I got to the front desk and this time the receptionist was there. I told him about everything that just happened and he told me I sounded crazy. I told him about the call and he told me that it never happens and that whoever told me that does not work there. I went back to the room with the receptionist and the man wasn't there. In fact, there was no sign of him at all. But I know it was real. I know it happened. I never seen that man ever again. My company used to have another office in another state that was 2 states over. Most of the time I flew there, but sometimes we would have equipment or vehicles that needed to be delivered. On those cases, I volunteered to make the trip and would stay at the other office for a week at a time. Sometimes I would take a rest stop at a motel, and sometimes I would break up the drive by pulling over to a rest stop and sleeping in the back of the vehicle for a bit. One time I was driving a big box truck, like a big truck you would rent at U-Haul. We bought the truck, it was used, and the back of the truck was filled with equipment and stuff from that office. I offered to make the trip. Unfortunately, the morning I was scheduled to take off, there was a delay, something I needed to take in that truck. I think it was a big copier machine. It didn't arrive till almost 3 p.m. After loading it in the truck and getting ready to take off, I knew I was going to hit rush hour traffic, so I opted to delay my leave for 2 hours. So it would be after 5, and even though there was still lots of traffic, it would only be local in the vicinity. And once I got out in the open, it was pretty much a straight shot till I reached state line. Having to pull over a couple times to fuel and restroom breaks, I got into a rural area north of my state after midnight. I pulled over one last time that night for fuel and coffee. The next stretch was going to be very dark and desolate, so I was preparing myself. I knew there was a last stop rest stop near the border, so I pulled over there to use the restroom, stretch my legs and maybe rest a few minutes before moving on. So I pull up to the rest stop and it's empty, it is somewhat well lit, and I was in pretty good shape, so I wasn't worried too much about my safety as I used to box. I go to the restroom and wash up a bit, but when I make it back to my truck and there is a pickup truck next to my truck, and a guy is standing next to my truck, he starts to make small talk. Then he asked me if I was having any mechanical problems with my truck. I thought that was odd, as why would that be a question? I get back in my truck and take off. After this point, there is a long stretch that is mostly forest-like area, kind of creepy driving through at 3 a.m. There is a bridge up ahead, a long bridge that, having driven this route before, I know that under that is like a gorge in water. All of a sudden, all my lights in the truck turn off. Headlights, instrument lights, even the running lights. I tap on the brakes and look behind me. Even the brake lights seem to be out. Thankfully, it was a moonlit night enough to me to gauge what was ahead of me. I was sort of more angry than panicked, so I slammed my fist on the dashboard and yelled something like, "Damn truck." It was a Fonz move because suddenly everything came back up again. I drove looking for somewhere to stop, like a gas station, motel, shopping center, something, but nothing was in sight. I remembered a gas station I had stopped at another time, which was a city about 10 more miles up the road. I make it to that gas station and notice that shortly after I pulled in that same pickup truck with that guy pulled over. Now he wasn't pulling up to the pumps, but I suddenly got this chill, like, did this MF do something to my truck? I started to put some fuel in the truck, thinking about my next move. Then just as I was about to get back in my truck and try to make it on, a cop car pulls into the station and I wave at it and get out. I make some small talk to the cop and point back in the direction of the street where that pickup truck was pulled over. After I do that, he drives off. I think I asked the police about the road conditions and asked them if there's a motel or something ahead. When I get back in my truck, I decide that if that guy did do something that might disable my truck, I better pull off for the night. I kept looking behind me to see if the truck was following me. I think it was, but couldn't be sure. I make it to another town a bit larger than the one that I had left, and there was a motel. I find a motel that was next to another gas station and check in. I lock up my truck, grab my bag, and keep looking around me like expecting something to pop out. I get into my room and try to sleep, but kept looking out my window. I only slept a few minutes at a time. Then by full daybreak, I check out, eat breakfast, and head back on the road. I eventually make it to my office and ask them to have the truck looked at by a mechanic. I told them the issue. They reported back to me after I was back home that the mechanic found nothing wrong and they never experienced the same issue.